we are in a perplexing time where in both dating and searching for a job, we are having to prove ourselves to an algorithm. We're having to prove ourselves to a bot that we are qualified for a job, that we deserve to be on a platform. That's wild. That's so wild. So then we're not having to think through things as a human being. We're coming at this of like, okay, how is a computer reading, taking in my profile, taking in my resume? That is wild.
Welcome back to the Career Therapy Podcast, where we explore the hidden side of modern work, help you turn procrastination into job search motivation, and teach you how to stress less, earn more, and change careers with confidence. My name is Martin McGovern, founder and lead coach at Career Therapy, and I'm excited to introduce our guest today. Please welcome Ann Marie Carrothers to the podcast. Today is a part 2 of our 2-part series with Ann Marie about the overlap of dating and job searching. So if you haven't listened to part 1, feel free to go back and check it out before listening to this episode. Ann Marie is a content strategist, digital educator, and founder of Public Privates, a project dedicated to helping people find love online safely by providing guidance on algorithms, AI facial recognition, and digital privacy and security. In today's episode, we talk about how ATS, or Applicant Tracking Systems, and dating algorithms control our careers and our love lives. We also talk about how to manipulate these systems with keywords that work in your favor and what you can do to sidestep the whole online sinkhole entirely and use these apps as tools rather than crutches in your life. If you like our show, please subscribe and leave us a review on iTunes. We love hearing from you, and your support enables us to keep curating these conversations and helping you grow in your life and career. Now grab a cup of coffee or tea and settle in for my conversation with Ann Marie. Today's episode is brought to you by Hirect.us, a free app that lets hiring teams and candidates instantly chat about incredible job opportunities. If you're a hiring manager, CEO, or recruiter, download the Hirect app to see a curated list of talented individuals and accelerate your hiring process 10 times faster than traditional ways. And if you're a job seeker, join the platform to start talking to decision makers at startups who are ready to hire. Businesses grow faster when everyone is communicating seamlessly. Download Hirect.us, that's Hirect.us today. All right, Ann Marie, we're back. I'm so excited for this part 2. If anyone hasn't checked out our previous episode, definitely go back and listen to it. Today, we're going to get much more into the technical side of things, whereas before we talked a little bit more about the social side of things with, dating versus the job search. Now we're getting into the algorithms and the ATS systems and everything like that. And the one thing I wanted to kick us off with to just sort of follow up from yesterday or the previous episode's conversation is this idea of the feeling of what's wrong with me. All right. Mm-hmm. So with the dating world, with the job search world, with the app, online apps of LinkedIn and Tinder and Bumble and whatever else is out there these days, a lot of times where people end up after all of these interactions and all of this stuff that they're trying to do and putting themselves out there is that they just start to feel like there's something wrong with them. And, a lot of it is within our control, but a lot of it is outside of our control. And I'm kind of curious, how do the algorithms make people feel? Let's just start there. How do you feel like the algorithms are hacking our emotions and the ways that we think about ourselves?
That's a really great point. That's actually one of the recommendations that if you look, there's been a really great AI ethics, I feel, movement happening where researchers and humanitarians and folks and kind of hacktivists, I don't know if people are still using that phrase, have been reviewing the use of AI in all these different sectors of our lives and making recommendations of how can we be improving things besides pointing out all of the issues that are currently happening. Because much of the reasons we've wanted to implement like AI to do a job besides, oh, it'll speed this up or things like that, has been bias is a big one. And we're like, oh, it's a machine, so it's unbiased, etc. But so the problem of that is to build an AI you got to teach it. You provide data. So essentially, like you want, you got to teach, like for machine learning, you want it to be able to spot a cat or a dog. So you're going to give it thousands and thousands of photos of cats and dogs and train it that way. As well as like parrots or things like that. And they'll learn, won't be able to identify it, etc. But the way in which an algorithm and machine learning is different from a human being and a toddler, it's like a toddler, you can point to a TV and show it a cow. And when the toddler's out in the real world and you're driving by a cow, the toddler's going to recognize it as the same thing as a cow. Machines aren't very smart. And they say you would have to show every single instance of what a cow can look like on a variety of things and things like that. So that's the thing to remember. So talking about the data we're feeding it. So say, for instance, you're wanting to do AI and, create an algorithm for better hiring, unbiased hiring, which is something we hear about all the time. Not only are you going to feed it your hiring practices, but you'll probably, because you have to feed it a lot of data, hiring practices of maybe bigger companies like Google, Apple, etc. If you just let that algorithm go, if you let the AI just start hiring people, it's probably going to start hiring mostly white people, because historically in the data, they've been hiring mostly white people. And so that is something that we're trying to bring to transparency, why we're asking for transparency. But the other big thing that we're asking as well is like, acknowledge the emotional elements of these of AI being used in this way, and the lack of transparency that does like acknowledge the consequences of feeling constantly rejected. For instance, a kind of a line we can see is how often bots are used in dating apps. Like it's not new to anybody. There's a lot more men on dating apps than women. And in order to keep people on the app and show, oh, there's lots of women, dating apps in the past really haven't been great about kind of scanning and getting rid of the bots. In fact, an estimated 30% of new accounts made each day on most dating apps are bots. So, men could be matching with these bots or these scams or stuff like that, getting frustrated. And so by the time they do match with a human, there's that frustration that like, if they don't immediately hit it off, then you have those like that anger, that violence, etc. about it. There's one example of this older woman in Alaska, matched with somebody, kind of didn't work out. He ended up calling her like 84 times in 12 hours, asking, and I hear that all the time of like, well, why didn't you want to go? Or why didn't it work out? Something like that, or asking for that. And we see this frustration and this reaction to rejection, things like that. And then we also start to see that, in the last few years, because it's been going on for a number of years now. We see that in the growing the incels, of the men's rights activists, of this like, oh, we deserve to have a girlfriend, we deserve this. And so we can't say that there are no consequences of not filtering out these bots, of that to keep people on apps and stuff like that, because there are real consequences.
Yeah. Well, and this is kind of consequences on both ends too, because I read an article in Business Insider or something recently where they were talking about how companies aren't getting good qualified candidates. You hear all the time, companies are like, well, we can't find anyone to fill these roles. And then you look at this huge number of people who are trying to find jobs and you're like, what are you talking about? And whenever I talk to people in the job search, obviously the job search is exhausting and it's emotional and it's taxing and all these different things. And these platforms promise to make all of that better. They
Mhm.
make a lot of big promises to people. If you watch Indeed's commercials, or if you watch
Yes.
any of this stuff, you're like, they're promising the world to these people. And it's actually something I struggle with as a coach, because there's a lot of coaches that are out there promising the world to people too. And it makes me feel like very just kind of icky, because I've never heard, it's kind of one of the reasons why I went career therapy with my stuff instead of like be a boss, whatever, and like all this other stuff.
Yeah.
Because it's like the therapeutic world never promises anything. They just say, come here and let's work it out. Whereas all of these websites are like, get a job in 24 hours. And it's like, what are you talking about? It takes 2 to 3 months for a company to make a decision. What jobs are you talking about? What opportunities are you referring to? And it really does, it's this cognitive dissonance that people go through of like, I'm being lied to, on top of having to go through this terrible experience of trying to find this stuff. And it does start to foster these core resentments, and what we talked about in the last podcast, this baggage that people are bringing from one interview to the next, from one date to the next. And if you go on 10 bad dates because you're just not good at dating yet, the 11th date is going to be pretty charged if you don't have like a short memory. Like one of the things that I've heard people say about dating is like, try and be like a dog, try and have a short memory and a good attitude, right? And like the same thing with the job search. We really have to just be like, I applied to that job when? Like you kind of have to be almost pretending to be like a what is Dory from
Oh
the
yeah.
Nemo movies, right? You have to like have this like really
Short-term memory.
exactly, really short-term memory in order to get through this stuff. And when that resentment builds, if we don't get rid of it, if we don't let it go somehow, it does get toxic. And this idea of, I just deserve a job, I just should have a job now, why hasn't anyone given me a job? And this also plays into and something else I want to get into in our conversation, the hyper focus on the self, this curating your profile, curating your dating profile. Like, just thinking about that, curating a dating profile is so crazy if you look at it from the outs, from like an alien looking at a human, right? Like, I'm going to sit down and find all my best photos. Hopefully, I'm going to sit
Mhm.
down and create some sort of like magical word salad. I'm going to sit down and I'm going to put this out into the world with no additional context and hope that it like, we're fishing with this stuff, right? And
Yeah.
it's so strange that every aspect of our life has now become a personal brand, right? And I come from the world of personal branding, so it's like I used to be really good at helping people with this stuff, and I still am with the coaching stuff in the careers world. And it's just kind of funny how you can hack these things, or at least you can attempt to hack these things. It's hard to know what's going on. Even the
Mhm.
people who
Mhm.
make the apps don't know what's happening in the apps, right?
Yeah,
And
and it's
and
proprietary
go ahead.
knowledge, all
Yeah.
this other stuff, black box, that no, the black box is often what it's referred to as. They don't exactly know what's happening. I
Well,
didn't mean to cut you
but no,
off.
but to the point, like, I deserve a job. And I say this to people all
Yeah.
the time when they are like getting really fired up. And I've had the incel conversation with some of my job seekers where
Mhm.
they're like, I'm starting to feel like a job seeking incel. Like, this is ridiculous. And I'm like, yeah, it is. And it's because of the environment the way things are set up. And
Yeah.
for anyone who doesn't know what an incel is, it's an involuntary celibate. It's this whole online community that's got a lot of issues with it.
Yeah.
But
A lot of
it's people that are just like, I deserve this, why don't I have it? And it's partially because they're being told by half the world, you should have this and you deserve this.
yeah.
And the fact that you don't have this is something wrong with the world. And then on the other hand, they're being told, uh, you know, any number of other things. But in my mind, I always have the viewpoint of, I don't deserve any of it until I have put myself out there and found the right way to do it. And truly, the right way to do it is to go meet people in real life and have real conversations and to do all these things, right? Dating
Yep.
apps can help the job boards can help, having a personal brand can help. I'm sure even having a podcast that someone can engage with will make me a more attractive candidate for a contract at some point in the future.
Right.
But there is this sort of interesting split that's happening where the people that are good at this stuff crush it and get everything. And the people that aren't good at this stuff just get more and more beat down until they become one of those people that is just, I deserve this and I'm angry at the world. And I hope in our conversation today, we can sort of like help people navigate this a little bit better. What are your thoughts on like where to start? Where do we start when it comes to navigating all this stuff?
I think a way to try to take ego out of it is to recognize that we are in a perplexing time where in both dating and searching for a job, we are having to prove ourselves to an algorithm. We're having to prove ourselves to a bot that we are qualified for a job, that we deserve to be on a platform. That's wild. That's so wild. So then we're not having to think through things as a human being. We're coming at this of like, okay, how is a computer reading, taking in my profile, taking in my resume? That is wild. So I think the first thing is, as I said, take your ego down a notch, because it truly isn't you. The name of the game has changed. But also to what you've said, the parts that haven't changed, that still remained some of the biggest factors in you getting a job and you meeting somebody, is meeting someone in person or through Zoom, video chat, something of like some form of human connection, and honestly putting yourself out there. Mm-hmm. That is a big factor I've seen for years.
Yeah.
Not to get into the rise of like social anxiety or things like that, but it's the fact that we've started having to like teach kids how to have conversations again in school. Like that's definitely something I've seen for years now. I mean, but I will be honest, how the first questions I would get in doing this, and I've been doing it for a while, were, young men coming up to me and asking me, what is a date and how do I plan a date? What do I say to people? What are good, you talk about like, oh, the people who get like everything, and like what are the toxic elements of it? And yes, there's this very toxic, the power of seduction, or like the game, or all of this stuff that we're kind of, I hate the phrase, the hookup culture, or whatever it is, but I think we've taken things to such an extent, such an extreme, that it's hurting everybody on all sides.
It is. There's this one YouTube channel called Channel 5, and it used to be called All Gas No Brakes, and they're absolutely, it's this guy, I think Callahan is his last name, and he's in this RV with his buddies, and he just goes around the country to like anti-vax conferences, like different things, like just talks to people and just like kind of lets them talk, and just, it's crazy to watch the underbelly of the everything. But there's one episode where he goes to a pickup artist group, and you just see like how sad and detached these folks are, and how like this is a coping mechanism, this is a like defense mechanism that they've built because of their experiences with the world. And you're seeing that in a lot of personal brands and in a lot of the ways that people talk about things. And I think like there's this sort of echo chamber back and forth that's happening, where someone puts themselves out there, they don't get the right reaction for who they are as a person, right? So like I'll even use myself as an example. I did a live stream for like a year and a half every single morning, and I had a lot of reasons for doing it. So views wasn't the only thing I was looking at, thank God, but it did not get a lot of traction, and it didn't get a lot of views. And it's one of those things where I'm like, just truly being myself. If I'm like stripped down, half awake in the morning, talking to the computer about job search or stoicism or whatever the heck I was thinking about at the time. And I look back at like when I was 24, 25, and I was trying to like create content versus just like be myself. And I was like so energetic. I was like in your face in the videos and like doing all this stuff. And those, I mean, nothing I've made gets tons and tons of engagement, but it got way more engagement when I was this like caricature of myself versus my actual self. And
Yeah.
you look at that and you just go, well, now I understand why so much of the world is how it is, right? Because even if you're trying to do something like job search stuff, which is boring, inherently boring,
Mhm.
the people that get all the views are people dancing on TikTok with little career tips. And it's like,
Yeah.
I guess I could do that. But now everyone is just being forced into these like pillars of content creation, you know? It's like,
Yeah.
I've never ever in my life danced to a video and like wanted to put captions on it. So like to do that, it's changing who I am as a person. And I think that
Yeah.
that's what's frustrating to people about dating apps and job boards and LinkedIn and all these things is that you almost feel like you have to change who you are at your core to ever be able to get through to the other side. And it's like, oh, I feel worthless because I'm being told by the dating app that I can't get a date
Yeah. Can't even be
unless I pretend to be someone
participate.
I'm not. It's like, and you
Yeah.
can watch like Tim Ferriss and like hold a dog, not like show your
Yeah.
like six
Yeah. Yeah.
pack,
Yeah.
whatever.
Show your six pack.
It's
Have
like
kittens sleeping
it's
on your
like
chest. Yeah.
yeah, it's
Yeah.
like
Yeah. That.
it's like I don't have a dog, so am I supposed to go like kidnap a dog? Like, and so I'm curious, like in the way that you see this changing our like neuroscience, changing our
Mm.
psychology, like
Mm.
what are you seeing in the emotions of the people that come to talk to you?
People are lost. That, especially recently. And I think this more has to do with the global pandemic, personally. I mean, the state of the world in general. People are lost. I've talked for years about recognizing that, recognizing, I talked about engagement for years. I talked about, and the importance of recognizing humans as organic beings and not data points, and that we act on emotion more than anything else. And, saying that we're stressed is an understatement. What we've seen from neurobiology standpoint, neurology standpoint, excuse me, through prolonged stress, our brain changes. Our frontal lobe shrinks, the element that like is able to take in new information, learn and kind of problem solve, that shrinks. And your amygdala, the emotional center of your brain, grows. And so not only do it kind of continues to kind of amp you up, it also makes it the frontal lobe also is the part of you that like can slow down the immediate stress response. So that's really impacts. And like, honey, prolonged states of stress, who hasn't been in a prolonged state of stress?
It's only been 33 straight years. Yeah.
Right. I know, like where did it start for you? But that's, so I've talked about that, of like recognizing recognizing we're organic beings, that we're, I know we have to like constantly bow down to as I said, trying to impress an algorithm all the time these days, but we're organic beings. And if you start from that point, your campaigning, your whatever you're trying to do will benefit if you start from the emotional core of it. That's going to benefit you greatly. And we've seen this because people, were like, Obama, his whole campaign was hope. That was based on emotion. Trump's fear, and control, because of course when we're in a stress response, we want to have access to control. Brexit was the same thing. I think it was take back control. And so people are like, well, how could you vote for this thing that was like really hurtful to you? And I was like, because it's an emotion, because they knew how to gear into people's emotions. And that's, where you need to start thinking from. So sorry, that's my long.
No, I love it because it
that
also
point.
helps people understand why things are happening, right?
Yeah.
And I think like one of the things that fundamentally bothers me about a lot of this stuff is that it's encouraging people to not understand and only react. And it's crazy you're talking about our brains actually physically changing, right?
Changing.
And it is so interesting. Like, so when I was back on the dating apps, right? And it really is fascinating to look at dating apps and LinkedIn next to each other, because I kind of got on both at like the exact same time in college. They sort of arose at the same time. I think LinkedIn came out a few years before. So I started with this professional image, and I started crafting it and like building a website and having my business cards, which in college, business cards, crazy. But like I had business cards that matched my resume, that matched my website, that matched my LinkedIn. And I was like putting all these pieces together. And I was still like, not every company wanted to work with me. And I was like, how is this possible? Like I'm doing everything I can. And like, and then it goes a step further into your personal life. So it's like, okay, at least this is my professional image. Everyone has a professional image. You're a little bit different at work than you are at home. Obviously, you're not going to be making the same jokes with your brothers as you would with your coworkers, like all these different things, right? And so there's a little bit of a separation of church and state in the job world. And people can put forth a bit more of a professional image. But in the dating world, it was raw. It was just, this is who you are, and people are rejecting you. And it's like, crap. And it's like, and that starts, but what I found so fascinating as these two worlds started to evolve next to each other is that the job search world became much more like dating, and the dating world almost became much more like a job search. And first dates became interviews where you're like, I've talked about these 5 things, and like I have to get all my like deal breakers out the way, and I got 20 people I gotta go on dates with, so we gotta move through
Here are my
this.
love languages. What are yours?
Oh
Like,
my gosh,
what's
like
your ideal? Yeah.
I put like my personality type in my profile at one point. Like it's
Yeah.
just like that. I had it in my dating profile and in my LinkedIn. And it's like, what am I doing here? Am I auditioning for jobs
Yeah.
while dating? It's crazy.
Yeah.
And like, and then it's funny to like take 10 steps back and look at how I actually got success in my love life and in my career. Always people that I met in person through activities that I enjoyed. And so like when
That's
you
the
really
golden
break,
ticket.
and I'm like, how much time did I waste on these profiles and this like image of myself and all these different things? And then like, and then it brings up this heightened imposter syndrome because you've put a version of yourself out there that doesn't match who you are. And that was a big thing that I had to go through when my first business went under. I had built this entire reputation around being an entrepreneur. I quit my job to become an entrepreneur, and I did all these things. And like some of it was me fronting, some of it was like all my coworkers being like, "Oh my God, you're doing this crazy thing." And like it really built it all up. And I just remember hitting a point when the business went under, and I read "Ego is the Enemy" by Ryan Holiday, and I just went like, I'm trapped in an image. Like I was wearing a vest, I had like my hair a certain way, I had certain glasses, I like was a caricature of myself. And
Mm.
I actually went through this like long phase of like changing everything, of just like destroying that entire image in order to rebuild something a bit more authentic. And I think
Yep.
one of the hardest parts of all this is like the keywording and the algorithms and the ATS and all this stuff. It's almost constructing an ego you could never live up to. And
Mm.
the imposter syndrome that comes along with that, I think is so damaging to people. And I'm curious, like when you
Mm.
see imposter syndrome come up, what does it look like on the dating side? And how do people deal with it?
Well, do you want to take a guess the average amount of time that goes by before people break up when you start newly dating
Oh
somebody?
God,
Take a
I'm like
guess.
so
How
sad and
many
scared.
months?
1,
3.
3. Okay.
People can only, so you're going to hear about like new relationship energy or things like that, or now there's like love bombing, and that's a whole other thing. You can only keep up a mask of your authentic self, whatever thing you're trying to promote, to that you're sure this is the way to be in order for someone to love you, for 3 months. And after that, boy, are you tired. This is also a reason why, people, I love at first sight or whatever. People warn you of like, hey, before you move in with somebody, before God, you get engaged or married to somebody, like give it a minute. Because the biological, like the actual hormonal, scientific feeling of love lasts at most 2 years. And I don't mean that's a scare of like nobody's in love. No, but it's important. Like, you need to get along as people. You need to get along as friends. There's so many other factors, because that rush is gonna end. And I'm not saying that there isn't ways to, like, you're not going to stop loving somebody or whatever, you know what I mean? But that rush of like, oh, they're perfect, honey, those shades in your eyes are going to come off after at least 2 years.
Those love goggles are going to come down.
Those love goggles are going to come off, and then you're going to be like, oh, this is a really annoying habit of theirs, or like, oh, I don't really like these parts. But yeah, the average time is about 3 months for at the most. Now, people can have this kind of fake persona.
And just, I want you to continue that point, but just to add
Please.
in some flavor, that's exactly the same thing with this dream job BS that everyone's talking about. Because everyone's like, as soon as I get that job, everything's gonna be fixed. I'm like, yeah, for a month or two, and then you're gonna hate your boss, and then the whole cycle starts again. But keep going with what you're saying.
That's fine. That's why, like, as I say again and again, the most important thing you can do on both sides of both activities, writing down, like really searching within yourself and writing down what you want. Like, what are the key features of a person, that you care about? And it can't be looks on it. It can't be looks, those fade. It has to be qualities. And limit to yourself to like 3 or 5, let's not run a laundry list. But having those key features, because that's going to help you know what to ask for on apps. Like, help that other person be able to connect with you, who has those things. And I know we've talked about like authenticity. I think I definitely feel a lot when you're talking about like, oh, I did this like character version of myself. So I did stand up for years, and I've been a performer forever. And that persona, because it is a persona, honey, would carry over in my relationships, to the point that I had somebody break up with me because of it. And I didn't understand it. And a friend was like, dude, were you aware of how you were at like the restaurant when we were all together? Like, you were on, it was all da 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 da. And I was like, oh yeah, that's really annoying. And it's not who I am. Cause like that was a comment I'd get a lot of the time. Like, I'm actually like, yes, I'm a performer, blah, blah, blah. I'm a very quiet person. And so, people would think like, oh, Ann Marie's, a laugh a minute, da, da, da. And they'd go on a vacation with me or something like that. And I'm like, yeah, I'm fun for about a day. And then I won't say anything for the next 4 days.
Well, and you hear that like all the time about performers, right? You hear it about like John Mulaney. You hear it about like all these performers that you would think would be a riot to hang out with. And like Andy Samberg, like I know someone whose sister is married to his whatever. It doesn't matter.
Oh wow!
Yeah, but the whole thing is like, they're like at the Christmas dinner, he didn't say a word. It's like, yeah, that makes about sense. And like, and I do think that what you're saying here is so important for people to realize, is like, the internet is encouraging you over the last 5 to 10 years to be authentic. And there is 2 ways to go with that. The one way is to be truly authentic, and then you really have to not care about likes and follows and all the engagement and all that stuff, which is incredibly difficult to do. Or you have to be authentic and live up to this image you create for yourself, which no one can do. Like, even the best performers, like that's why there's so much abuse, like drug abuse and stuff like that, because people are so stressed out because they can't maintain the facade in a way. And I love what you're saying there, because that like that idea of always being on, I was listening to an interview with Rob Lowe of all people, and
Mm,
someone was asking him about like fame. And they were like, when was the best time to be famous? And he gave this weird answer about like 1984 being the perfect time because no one had cameras or phones or social media or anything. It was before a bunch, like the AIDS outbreak and everything like that. He's like, we thought cocaine was healthy for us. Like, obviously, they had a lot of things wrong, but
yeah.
but he was talking about like fame today. He's like, why bother? Why bother with fame today? It's all responsibility. It's like you have to be this character 24/7 all the time. And this is what's happening to normal people who don't get paid Rob Lowe salaries. And it's really
Correct.
frustrating because it's like you have to pretend to be some sort of like coding savant every single day in order to be able to get an entry level role at some BS company. It's kind of crazy. And you have to pretend to be some Lothario woman like whisperer in order to get a date with an average normal human being. It's this
Yeah.
crazy thing that happens. And you hear it in the way people talk. It's like, I have to be a millionaire. I have to like go get plastic
Yeah.
surgery. I have to go do all
Yeah.
these different things. And it's really changing people. It's changing how people, and you see it in young people the most, because I was listening to Jonathan Haidt, who runs the Heterodox Academy, and he was talking about how suicide rates are increasing in young women.
Yep.
and and I think like this is such a terrible evolution of all these things, right? These things were built in a way that was supposed to help us, supposed to be like, let's streamline your hiring process, let's
Yeah.
allow anyone to access any jobs around the country, right? But
Yeah.
all it seems to really be doing is giving everyone anxiety disorders and and putting everyone in competition with, like, you're not just competing with the 5 other people in your
No,
town that
you're
code,
competing with the world.
you're competing with India, like you're
Yeah.
competing with
Yeah.
everyone, billions
Yeah.
of people. And how do you get the job if like everyone in the world could potentially, at least in the dating world, I guess, like you're somewhat limited by your location, right? But
Mhm.
then you got all these like shows about people dating people in other countries who are then getting swindled and
Oh,
catfished, right?
the 700 like not 90-day fiance friend, like that whole franchise. Oh,
Yeah.
absolutely. Which I think there's at least like as many podcasts about that show as there are that many shows. No, it is yeah, it's a wild time to say the least. No, so many things to respond to.
Well, so let's start with the I want to just get back to the technical piece here,
Sure.
because there's an amount that we can, again, going back to our previous conversation, what's in your control and what's out of your control, right? We can lament about
Yeah.
all this stuff all day, but at the end of the day,
Yeah.
this is how the world is, and all we can do is respond to it. So let's say someone is sitting down and they're like, all right, I'm still working on building up the confidence to go network or to go talk to someone in the real
Right.
world. Like, I remember when I tried to ask someone out who I rode the train with every day, it took like months to build up the courage. But people are terrified to network. People are terrified to talk to people. So
Oh, they are.
they're gonna try the apps first. They're gonna try social
Mhm.
media first. They're gonna try all these other easier solutions. Let's say their toe in the water. And the apps are gonna say, you have to put your best foot forward. So how do we hack the apps? How do we
Sure.
use them in a
How do you
way that is,
manipulate an algorithm?
yes, how do
Yeah.
we get the benefits without getting fully trapped in all the negatives? Obviously can't avoid every negative, but
Right.
how do you squeeze as much value out of them as possible without going completely off the rails?
So it's interesting because we're talking about authenticity, and how we have to go around things about things today is in actually a very inauthentic way.
Mhm.
Um, because as I said, we're trying to impress an algorithm. We're not trying to impress a person. Like, in order to access that person, you have to impress the algorithm. So what I would suggest to people if you have to do the apps, like my first thing, as I said, is like, first thing, figure out what you want. Second thing, look at what you like to do and figure out how to go do them. I recognize we're in a pandemic, so if you can't go to a class, we can't go to a meetup, that kind of, that kind of thing. Guess what? There's virtual spaces for that. And as I've said, there's been success there. But the third thing, if you have to use an app, how to manipulate algorithms, there's a number of ways. So first of all, it is extremely likely that, once again, I can't do absolutes because this isn't out. They have not been transparent about the algorithms. These are things that have been surmised by engineers and other folks playing around with it. So I just want to, whoa.
You're good.
So sorry. Got a suicidal pigeon over here.
Oh my goodness.
So I just want to explain that. I'm awake now. So what I would suggest is, I just want to provide some background to that. So what the algorithms are typically doing on dating apps, especially dating apps where you swipe, etc., is they're giving you what's called an ELO score, which is a phrase used in like gaming or chess. Where when you go to a chess tournament, they're not going to put you with, if you've done 300 chess messages and you're amazing, they're not going to put you at number one. They're going to find somebody who has a similar score to you of success, so you're matched there. So that's what the algorithm is trying to do, and it bases your score based on your profile pictures, what you write in your profile. Those are the two biggest factors. And then it starts to pay attention to your behavior on the app. For instance, if you are saying yes to everybody, you're swiping yes to everybody, it will shadow ban you on the app. And it'll start saying, oh, you've reached everybody in your area, there's nobody else. Because it thinks you're a bot. It thinks you're a scam. So those provisions that have been put in place. Yeah. So you can't, be careful about saying yes to little, unless it's
same
like
with LinkedIn.
Saying,
if you connect with everyone, it'll stop showing you people.
Exactly. So there's those safety measures they've tried to put in place. So be careful of that. It's also aware of how active you are in the app. If you're not a frequent user, guess what? It's not going to show your profile a lot. It's not going to show that a lot, because they want to be matching people with people who are using the same amount. So that's something mindful. Even if you just check on maybe once a day or something like that, that's a good way to kind of stay in the game as the algorithm will be tracking you. It also pays attention to the length of your messages, how frequently you message people, things like that. If you do more messages, it's going to be wanting to, it'll up your score and show you more people. But another feature that people should be aware of that we don't have a lot of control over, because those are all things these are actions you can take. Maybe do better profile pictures, and there's lots of writing about that. Focus on your keywords or things like that on your profile. OkCupid years and years ago did this really great illustrative mapping of the most common words used by folks, of what people really responded to and what they didn't. If a woman said, she had a cat, she would get a lot of content. But if she said she had cats, plural, then I kid you not, like that was that, it was that fine grained. So there's resources out there, and I have them on my site and things like that, so we can get into the nitty gritty. And I definitely talk with my clients about, like, okay, let's be mindful of what your pictures are. Like, maybe if you have something in red, like if you're a femme presenting person, hey, if something in red, we know, like, from a psychology standpoint, behavioral psychology standpoint, people respond X, Y, and Z. There's that kind of stuff you could do. The problem where we don't have control over things is that dating apps such as Tinder likely use the same kind of algorithm that, like, Netflix uses to recommend you movies. And it's something called collaborative filtering. So what collaborative filtering is that the algorithm is deciding what to show you in terms of profile, say on a dating app, based on both your actions on the app as well as the actions of all other users. So it's not just you. So ways that can hurt you is, let's say somebody goes on the app, you have one person, they swipe yes to a bunch of blondes and then no to a brunette. And that happens again and again and again. by the time you get to the app and you said yes to that same blonde, the algorithm has learned that people who like blondes don't like brunettes. So it'll stop showing people's profiles that way. Or more importantly, it might stop showing your profiles. And while, once again, proprietary knowledge of algorithms or these dating apps aren't sharing stuff, the data we do have is that Black women are the least messaged on dating apps. And so we can see how bias creeps in to these apps. We do have that data. So I will be mindful, like it would be great, hi Tinder or other dating apps if you're listening, it would be great that you could have a feature that you could like press a button and reset the algorithm or something like that. They're not going to get rid of it because, as I said, they like an algorithm's there to try to prevent bots. It's there for reasons. But to reset it, because right now I can tell you entire websites are dedicated to how to reset your Tinder, like how to reset your Tinder so you can see more people or get back out there again. Because it's actually extremely difficult to do, to try and reset your ELO score, to try and reset your profile. So that is kind of the background I would give. So the things you do have control over, once again, you can go out and meet people. You can put yourself out there. You can write down. There's actually a lot you do have control over that don't require an app. But yes, if you use it, then happy to talk to. And then there's resources on my site of like, okay, let's be mindful of our pictures. And once again, what you're writing on your profile, and then as well as your actions on apps. You do have somewhat control. Yeah.
We interrupt today's episode to let you know about Career Therapy's Unstuck coaching program. If you're feeling paralyzed by job search procrastination and unsure of what to do next in your career, we're here to help. Each month as a member, you will get access to 2 one-on-one coaching calls, unlimited virtual chat with your coach via Slack, invitations to bi-weekly group coaching sessions, and lifetime access to our 8-part job search curriculum. Want to take your search to the next level? Head over to careertherapy.com and schedule a free 15-minute consultation to chat with me today and see if coaching is right for you. Now back to our show. Again, it's like there are certain things in our control and certain things outside of our control, and we always want to focus on what's in our control and then build those other pieces of ourselves. And I think one of the important things to remember about everything that we're talking about here is that these apps are supposed to be tools that enable you to do what you do better, right? They're not supposed to be a crutch that is your only source of interaction. And so, for instance, this podcast is a wonderful tool to get ideas out there, to help me connect with people, to connect with listeners or potential clients and things like that. But first and foremost, I enjoy having conversations with people, and that I would be having a conversation with you, Ann Marie, regardless of the podcast. And we have prior to the podcast. And and these are the things that it's not a replacement, it's an augmentation. And so when it comes to dating, when it comes to job seeking, these profiles and these apps need to be augmentations to the full capability that you're bringing to the job search, that you're bringing to your life, of trying to be better, trying to improve. And there's so much value in taking the hard road. Now, the one question I have for you that maybe we can end on is, is it possible as we move into the future to do these things without these apps? Is it possible to have a career without LinkedIn? The general sense right now is if you're not on LinkedIn, you don't exist to a company. Is it possible to date without dating apps anymore? And I think these are the questions that when I'm on TikTok every once in a while, I see a lot of people on younger people on podcasts, lamenting these things and asking these questions. And I'm kind of curious, let's say we talked about the technical side. Now let's talk about the non-technical side. If we put down the computer and put down the apps, where do we start?
Sure. So I think that the first thing, and I've kind of just wanted to say this whole time, is the biggest thing I say to people is like, first of all, like, be kind to yourself. This is a lot. This is a lot more than our parents did. This is a lot more than, hey, even 10 years ago we were doing. It is work and it's unfortunate. But like, be kind to yourself, like have that acknowledgement and that you're working hard. Don't, just acknowledge that of just like, things have changed. It's not you. It's just a lot higher stakes. So to answer your question, dating most certainly can be done outside of apps. Okay, can we start? Like, that's honestly what I recommend again and again. Like, the recommendations I do out on the site and things like that are like, okay, if if you're going that route, then here are some things to know, etc. And I'm always happy to do that. But I also try to put a lot of stuff out there, as I've said in this in this podcast, is the things you can do to meet people are the same things we've been doing for ages and ages and ages. Mm-hmm. If it's safe, if you're vaccinated and safe, go outside, do things you want to do. Going out, going to places where you're going to meet people, and ideally in situations where you're doing something you enjoy, a concert, a class, things like that. That is one of the best ways to meet people. I will say this, I do not recommend like traveling, like going to like, oh, I'm going to be part of this like group on a tour or traveling, stuff like that. Don't do that. That's a really isolating thing. I've heard of people who are like, oh, I'm going to go like meet somebody out. Like, no, those movies are lying to you. Please don't do that. That's how the 90 Day Fiance, franchise got started. But it absolutely can. And I think actually one of the recommendations for like our generation and the generations for right now, like millennials and Gen Z, we are going to need to be a generation that knows actually how to pull back from the information overload. That is going to be our survival tool going forward, because you point to, this rise in mental illness, things like that. We were not meant to be linked into every awful thing that's going on in the world 24/7. We were not wired for that. And as we can see, it's coming with very serious consequences for us biologically. So I think going forward, like that's, people are like, oh, I'm unplugging. It's not that. Like, we still like their tool. We just need to acknowledge their tool again. And in the ways that we can set those boundaries around taking a step back. But yeah, the big thing I can say to folks is like, absolutely, I don't recommend apps, to be honest. I get that Tinder has 57 million users on it. So, ooh, yay, 57 million people it could be matched to. But we know psychologically, human beings, if you have more than 6 things like choices, you can't choose. So like, maybe
choice is bad. Yeah.
Don't do the 57 million. So keeping it to doing things in your area, stuff like that you enjoy, you're going to find people who also hopefully enjoy that thing, and starts going from there. Like, yes, meet cutes are like, no, please don't put your heart on meet cutes. And I tell people that, don't be like putting your heart on like the spark or whatever. Like, but putting yourself out there and pursuing things you want will really help you find people along the way.
Yeah. And I think a key point here is that if you're taking the easiest route, you're not going to actually grow as quickly. And one of the things that, if I look back at everything in my career, the memories that I have where I grew the most are the ones in which I put myself in situations that were difficult. And so the dating apps and all the time that I spent swiping and all the time I spent going out with people that weren't right for me, and like I wasn't right for them, and it was just a total cluster. You could go on 5 or 6 of those dates and you don't really get much. You don't learn a lot. You don't grow a lot, because you never put yourself in a situation where you're having to figure out what your hobbies are, or put yourself in a situation where you have to go like, oh, I actually thought I liked yoga and I maybe don't, or I thought I liked this. Like, there's so much more that you gain from putting yourself into these, putting yourself into situations of like, maybe you don't find someone that you'll date, but you actually find a hobby that like ignites your curiosity for the next 5 years, like even better. Right. And so whereas like on a dating app, you either get a date or you feel like crap, and like, there's not any other value there. And I think the same with job applications and job boards. It's like, you get the job or you feel rejected. There's nothing else that you get out of it.
Between.
Right.
Yeah.
And Go ahead.
Oh, I was going to say, no, I was going to say to your point, like, by the way, big factor here, people like people who are interesting. So I recognize capitalism has made us try to like monetize all our hobbies, but like, please go out and have a hobby. Please go out and learn something you want to do or that you like, or have projects or whatever, if you know, have the capacity for that. Because that's going to get you, that's going to once again help you both in finding people who want to date you, as well as helping you with the job. Like it's a weird thing that I've heard in interviews now, are like, oh, do you have any like fun hobbies, or what have you been doing during the pandemic? And I was like, well, besides trying to survive, like, oh, I've been doing X. You want to show you have a life and you are an interesting person. I cannot tell you how many people are not, like, I'm not going to say not that interesting, but are unable to communicate those passions or those things, because that's what people are really drawn to.
It's so true. And like, I'll just give a quick example in the job search arena. Even if it's something that you don't do a ton, it's interesting, right? And so like in my first interview ever for a job, maybe it was back in college on campus, I went in, I had a broken thumb because I went on a skiing outing that weekend with a bunch of people in my dorm. And I go to shake the guy's hand because of course I'm anxious and I don't remember my hand is broken. And he's like, what happened to your hand? And I go, oh, I went skiing this weekend. And he just proceeded to talk about skiing for 25 minutes. And I was like, yeah, I skied when I was 12 and I broke my thumb this weekend. Like, that's all I know. And like, but it was an interesting enough like back and forth where like, he goes, oh, we should probably talk about like the job. And I was like, yeah, in the last 5 minutes. And I ended up getting that job. And like, these are the funny things that people overlook. It's like, if you're in an interview and they say, well, what do you got going on in your life? And you say, I'm just applying for jobs. That's all I'm doing every day. And I'm angry. It's like, cool, good for you, man.
Yeah.
But it's like, if you have a project, I'm always encouraging people to have little side projects, not just, not to be an entrepreneur or anything, but just to like keep your sanity and have something to talk about. And like the same in the dating
something
world.
you can control.
Yeah.
Like, that's a big part of it. Like having something that you know you like, it's on, not on you, but you enjoy doing. Like that was like actually a wonderful thing with the pandemic for me, is like, you know, yes, I was getting frustrated. My job might take forever to do something, but knowing that at the end of the day, I had something I could control and be like, oh, I can just get this stuff done now. Like that can help with those feelings of everything else being out of control. Sorry to interrupt you. I apologize.
No, you're right on point. And because like, imagine if you went on a date with someone and they said, so what do you do? And you're like, when you're not on this date, you're like, I just juggle other dates.
Yeah.
Cool. Yeah. Great conversation. Like, this is going so well. And like, the same with the job search. It's like, so what do you do when you're not talking to us about this job? I talk to other people about other jobs. Cool. But like, what, like, give us I think that's something. The thing. It's like, and where I want to end on all this is like going back to that ego is the enemy piece. Everything on the internet is telling you to build your ego, focus on yourself, brand yourself, sell yourself, improve your profiles, improve the way you set like keywords and all that stuff. And there's value in doing a lot of that stuff. But at the end of the day, this is people hiring people. And this is where the algorithms also go wrong, because companies are getting crappy employees because they never get the emotional piece. They're filtering people just on keywords, and they're missing out. There's that article. They're missing out on great candidates because they're filtering out great candidates because they don't have the right keywords. And so if we can just, again, use these things as tools and then improve our ability to handle the real world, I think that will help people, you know, grow much quicker throughout their careers and in their love life.
And also focusing on community. I see a lot of growth and focus on like building community. And because I think that's something, you know, the many lessons of the pandemic we've realized is how critical that is. And how, I mean, that's essentially what we're both saying is, you know, that is how you get the jobs. That is how you meet people, is having a network, but like friends like that. That's also the going out and doing stuff or building online community or stuff like that. It's like by focusing on that, these other things can come more naturally. So anyway, I mean, I can go on. I have so many funny
Yeah.
stories.
No,
That
I
keep
love it.
I
I
really
love
don't know.
it.
I was like, oh, I can tell you like the pickup line. I can tell you like the pickup line adventures of like serial dating, or times where like I was like, oh, I should probably base these on like, here are all my trial and errors of like, I used to set up back to back. Like I had one Starbucks location and like 20 minutes for
let's
like 20
wait.
30
We
minutes.
got some time. Let's dig
Okay,
into a
we got
couple of
some
these things
time. I can do this.
because I do
Yeah.
think that there's so like, all right. So when I was going through the whole dating
Yeah.
app phase of my life,
Yeah.
there I had to listen to The Art of Charm, and I had to listen to a lot of things because I was an awkward, anxious
Yeah.
weirdo, and like,
And that's so many people. That's
yeah,
so many people. That's why it's a $1 billion industry.
100%. And I'm like, okay, I'm gonna put like a TARDIS mug in my picture just to filter out like nerds. Like
Right.
maybe
Perfect.
I'll get some nerds. And like I think what's so funny about all this stuff is like you learn like what to say, and like in there are bad parts of the internet, good parts of the internet, and sometimes you send things that you're like, this is cringy even for me, but it's like you're trying to make a joke or you're trying to do whatever, and
Right.
like,
Right.
and I think I'm, one of the things that you pointed out, which I think is really important, and then I want to hear your stories, is
Sure.
don't just travel the world and expect things to happen.
Yeah.
I think like the eat, pray, love thing really kind of builds
God.
people's brains in the wrong way.
Emily in Paris.
Right. Exactly. Oh. And so like just get a fedora or whatever. And like one of the things that I like, because I actually met my partner through traveling, but it was through a travel community. And it was called
back to that community
exactly.
piece.
And it was called Under 30 Experiences. And we've had Matt on the podcast who founded it. And like one of the things that was so interesting about it was that you went on a trip with 20 other strangers, all in your same age group, and you just did crazy trips around the world. And the thing is, I don't like to travel that much. I'm not like a huge travel buff. I don't like seek out places to go. Like my partner's really into travel, and that's why she worked for the company. And like, it's funny how she's like, oh, I want to go to Greece and I want to go to here. And I'm just the person that's like, I'll go wherever anyone else wants to go. You plan it, I'll go. Yeah. And like, it's, if my buddy didn't message me one day randomly and say, I just came back from a trip to Costa Rica with this group, you should go on a trip. And I went, I don't know, I don't really travel. He's like, you should go on a trip, like get out of your house. I was like, okay. And I signed up for Iceland, and like that completely changed the trajectory of the next like 5 years of my life, because I ended up like meeting all these people and then did a road trip around the country and then started going to all these meetups. It's like, it's not like, oh, I did one thing, we met. No, it took like 7 years to get to the place that I ended up. And it's like, I think people also don't look at the long game of how this stuff plays out. They're like,
oh my word,
I didn't get married within 2 weeks. It's like, no, like we knew each other for like 5 years before we even realized like, oh wait, we should probably go. Like, this is the kind of stuff. And I'm curious, all right, we're talking about starting points, but I think we also need to keep in mind like the long journey that is ahead. But what are some of the things that you've noticed, some of the stories that you've come across?
Oh, sure. So many. Well, I'll speak to your journey point. So one of my longest relationships actually, had like that great story. So I'm very forward. I'm very used to like making my intentions known, not in an aggressive way, but I memorized this script at a young age, like in college, and it was about it was really an exercise in like being able to like work up to handle rejection. Like it was like this script from a template, and I just modified it. And so I would practice when I would see people in the real world, going up to them and asking them out, and trying to find that appropriate way. And it was basically like, and it's something I've shared with a lot of people, is like, hey, I'm so sorry to bother you. I'm on my way to do this thing, but I think you're really hot, or something like that. Or I love this thing, and would you like to grab coffee sometime? No pressure. If like here's my number, if you things like that. So it's a chill, like they can make the decision. You can hand it to them. They don't have to say yes or no, whatever. Everybody loves a compliment. If you do it appropriately, that balance. And it was great. And I cannot tell you how many people I ended up dating because of that. And whether or not I recommend that all the time, definitely be aware of circumstances or environments, if you see somebody having a hard time juggling things or whatever, or
Don't
they
do
look
it on
scared.
LinkedIn chat.
Don't do it in LinkedIn chat, don't do it in the office. Don't do it at 4 a.m. when you see somebody across the street and they're kind of looking scared. Like maybe don't do that. Don't approach somebody then. But that was like a really good exercise in like getting over what you've talked about, pushing yourself through an uncomfortable feeling, that discomfort, to getting that reward. So speaking through the journey point. Okay. So that's what I'm saying. So I used to kind of use that line. And so it was Halloween, and in Chicago, we know Chicago, like Halloween is like musical chairs for single people.
Yeah.
Cause it's like the last time people are going to go out before winter really hits, and nobody's out anymore. So you got to get those numbers, honey. You got to line up that winter cuddle buddy. And, so I was lining up my winter cuddle buddies and getting those numbers. And, I see somebody, and we were like DC, like matching, like they were like the superhero to my like supervillain costume. And so I was like, hey, and whatever, and we're dancing. And I was like, oh, can I, do you want to like hang out and something like that? Can we exchange numbers, something like that? And they're like, nah. And I'm like, okay, that's chill. And I went back to the too many other numbers I had already that night. So like 6 months, like 6 or 7 months went by, and we end up auditioning for the same show in Chicago. Yeah. And we end up both getting into the show. And after the first rehearsal, they text me and they're like, hey, were you like Catwoman for Halloween? It did this thing. And I was like, I am so sorry for whatever whiskey Ann Marie said to you that night. And once again, we're going to learn things here. And so all people were just like, oh, you guys like clearly have this chemistry, whatever. And I really like them. And they were great. And they actually like came over. I used to do this move that was like, I would invite people over for like crepes or something like that. And that was because I didn't drink anymore at the time. And so I invited them over for crepes, and we were going to play a game or something like that. And somebody else I was seeing at the time, it was just like a weird thing. They texted me and they're like, hey, I'm going to head over. Like, if you want to like, get together, stuff like that. And I said yes to that. So then I turned to this person, because I was like, oh, it's friends. We're just friends or something like that. They didn't want my number. So I was like, honey, you got to go. I'll put these crepes in Tupperware. Like, I've got a date coming over. And that mistake like elongated this eventual courtship, like another like 6 months.
Oh,
so all of this is to say, like, and then eventually like we were hanging out one night, and it was like, oh, people always like ask if we're dating because we're like spend all this time together, we're hanging out and stuff like that. And they're like, why aren't we dating? And I was like, oh, okay, we'll do that. And that's how eventually it happened. And we were together for like 5 years or so. But anyway, timing is everything. And I think we can say back to like, same thing with jobs, I was like, oh, if we'd seen that they had that position open earlier. It sucks that a lot of times in connection, like this was, luckily you had that long journey, 7 years, and now you're together. And, even though it ended, it was like this funny story of like, oh, here were all the times where, we just weren't direct and blah, blah, blah. But timing can be a really tricky thing. I know one client was having a real connection with somebody, but they were like moving away. And do you want to do that long-term relationship? Do you want a long distance relationship or things like that? And that's a lot of things is can come down to timing, which is really hard. But at the same time, if we're looking at the long game, there might be occasions where that person moves back or other things. Maybe you move there, whatever, learning how to keep people in your life and not completely burn bridges or stuff like that, unless that needs to happen, unless it's a boundary. Yeah, I think that is something to really focus on.
You're so on point. And I really appreciate you sharing this, because it's like, it really is. And this is the same with the job search, right? Like, you need to, so many people finish a job application or an interview series and they get rejected, and then they hate that company and they never want to go back, and they hold on to
Yeah.
that resentment. And I'm like,
Yeah, don't.
first of all, it's a company. Like, so there are differences
Yeah.
in the dating, like, and everything, but there's this thing that happens where people end up burning their own bridges. And I see this with
Yeah.
clients all the time, where it's like, you could have left on good terms and eventually turned that around in like 6 months to a year if you wanted to.
Yep. Yep.
And one of the key things I always tell people is like, always be the most helpful person, always be the most helpful
Mm,
person. And like,
mm,
what ends up happening, and I've done this, is like, a company offers me a job and it doesn't pay the right amount. So I go, I can't do that for that price, but I know people who are like breaking into the industry who would be happy to do that. Would you
mm,
like introductions?
mm.
So now my network is happy, the company's happy, and I'm happy because I
Yeah.
left on good terms.
Yeah.
Or flip it around, like, they turn me down and I still go, apparently you needed someone more senior. Would you like some introductions to other people? That I'm happy to make those introductions. And it
Mhm.
keeps the relationship going. Now, am I
Right.
perfect? Is everyone I've ever met like? I'm sure there's tons of people that hate me, and I'm sure I've
Yeah.
made a lot of bad impressions, but you can try your best as you get better and better at this stuff. And you can become less anxious about doing this stuff if you do it more, if you expose yourself to it
Yeah.
more. And to your stories here, I think it's so interesting because it's like, in my own experience in my relationship, it was the exact same way. Timing was such a funny thing. And we comment all the time about how, like, we've known each other for a lot longer than we've been together, and we just got engaged
Mhm.
this year. And like, if we had tried to date at any other point in our life than when we exactly did start dating, we
Yeah.
would have blown it up, both of us, in our own
Mm.
ways. And it's funny to look back because, like, we were friends for multiple years, and we ended up only going out uh, in this one very specific instance. Like, the things that had to happen for us to actually go on a first date is kind of crazy. But what ended up happening was I was moving to Texas and they had just gone through a breakup in the same week. And then they missed, my partner missed my going away party. So we got drinks the night before I left to like say goodbye. And then we're like, that was a really fun night. Let's just like keep in touch while you're in Texas, and
Yeah.
like just friendship stuff. And then
Mhm.
like while I was in Texas, we started doing these like Tipsy Tuesday gin and tonics on Zoom. And then like,
Aw.
and then what, the funniest thing happened, she missed one because she was hanging out with her sister. And I was like, oh no, that hurt. That hurt a lot. Oh no, I like this person. It was like a realization. And then, the dominoes kept falling, and now we're together. And it's like, it's so funny if you just try and be nice and helpful and
Yeah.
there for people, and like, while also fixing your own shit. Like, throughout the entire time we were friends, I was just
Mm.
fixing my own shit, like going
Yeah.
through a lot of crap on my own. And so is she. And like, and now it, like, we got to a place where we were both in the same amount of crappy shit where we could handle each other, and then we could
Yep.
help each other build from there. And I
Right.
think the same thing happens with these jobs. It's like, companies are complete messes. You're also a mess.
Yeah.
And you should not think of the company as this perfect thing that you have to be perfect for. And they should not think of you as this person who's already been perfect and done everything. Like, there's these high expectations that are unrealistic in dating and in the job search. And like, I don't know how to change what companies think, but we can change how we think about things, of like, all right, I'm not perfect, but I'm going to be helpful. I'm not perfect, but I'm going to be there for this person as best as I can in the ways that I can. And like,
Yeah.
if we approach it in that way, it's all about growth and learning and becoming a better person through these experiences. Because as we talked about in the episode with the therapist, a year or so back,
Mhm.
we don't get taught this stuff. So it's all learned through trial and error.
Yep.
And trial and error, especially when booze is involved and people are anxious and things are not good, you're just you're literally like banging your head against a wall, hoping that like a door opens. And it's like,
Yeah.
yeah. And this is a painful process for
Yeah.
everyone.
Yeah.
Um, And so, it's good that you're here helping people navigate those emotions, and
Well,
that
thank you so
coaches
much.
exist helping people. Like it's
Yeah,
gonna be difficult, but if you approach it from this perspective of I'm learning and I'm trying to be helpful and kind, it really
yeah,
does change things. And
yeah.
if there was one piece of advice you could give someone who's just
Oh.
like, I know we're going to try and sum it up too much, but if there's one thing you could say to someone who's like, okay, I'm going to put down the dating app and
Mm,
I'm going to go out and talk to someone, maybe a pickup line, maybe something,
sure.
what would be a thing that they could do?
Be kind to yourself in the process, to be honest. Um, Kindness and honesty. You're like honest with yourself, honest with yourself about like maybe capacity you have, not just your wants, but like of what you were describing. I was thinking of just like, yeah, it's also good to be honest about like, do you have the capacity in your life to be doing a certain kind of relationship, or then to be honest with the person of like, hey, I'm kind of this way. But yeah, the one thing I'd recommend is be honest with yourself as well as others, if you can do so safely, and kindness, showing that both to others and yourself in this process, and recognizing the element, trying to focus on the parts that you have control over, and keeping the focus on there. um that would be the thing. I would also lastly kind of limit your choices. Think of the secretary problem in this, of um if you know what you want, if you've gotten good about being honest about what you want, or you've learned that through dating, then keep in mind of like that when you do meet somebody, maybe you don't have that initial spark or whatever like that, but if they are kind and they're smart or whatever other quality like qualities you want, like fine, let that settle in, because it's more, I feel like good partnerships are more about people who you can be your authentic self with and be comfortable, that comfort element. I think that's a lot of what people are looking for, is to be able to be comfortable with somebody.
I love it. We'll end there. And Ann Marie, thank you so much for being on for part 2
Yeah.
and getting even deeper into the weeds. It's been a lot of fun.
Absolutely. Same. Thanks for having me.
Thank you so much for taking the time to listen to this episode today. I really appreciate your support of what we're building here at Career Therapy as we continue to try and explore the hidden side of modern work and tell some of the stories that maybe don't get enough light shed on them. If you enjoyed what you listened to today, I hope you will leave us a review on iTunes. Subscribe to this wherever you're listening or watching on YouTube, Spotify, etc. And share this with some friends who you know are going through similar experiences and looking to build their career and gain some insights along the way. Again, thank you so much for stopping by, and I wish you the best. I'll see you on the next episode.